bad. Good.
Welcome, everyone, to Season 4, Episode 125 of the Premier Pod. I'm your host, Yash Bika, joined by my co-host, Tyler Chan. In this episode, we got a pretty exciting one because there was a lot of good action that happened in the Premier League this past weekend. A lot of crazy drama surrounding the Manchester United-West Ham match. Chelsea taking care of business, Liverpool rolling on, City stumbling a little bit. But to get things started, we have to start off with the biggest game of this past weekend, which was Tottenham versus Chelsea. Chelsea picking up a 3-0 win at Tottenham's new home. It's actually pretty funny. There was a stat that Tottenham or Chelsea have actually beat Tottenham in their new stadium 3 times. The 3 times they've been there, they beat them all 3 times in their new home ground. So a little bit of interesting stat there. But Chelsea were just dominant. They were just by far, they knew they were the better team. They acted like they were the better team. They just came in there, took care of business, and basically gave Tottenham no chance. That's literally how it felt. Tottenham literally had no chance to win this game, and Chelsea just took care of business the way they normally do and the way they have been doing under Tuchel, which is come in with the game plan, execute the game plan, and then walk out victorious. So it was 10 out of 10 performance from Chelsea.
Chelsea literally made the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium like their home. Like this been like I've seen like now doodles and cartoons of just the Tottenham Stadium being defaced and just having all like the Chelsea like lion and all the blue just smear on along the walls of the stadium. It's Tottenham not doing a very good job, protecting
their
the
home
fortress.
ground.
Yeah, it's not very much a fortress as a team in the top 6 should have, quote unquote top 6 should have. But they're starting to become, back down to earth. Whereas in the beginning of the season, you saw Tottenham, they're kind of fighting for like the top spot. It was very surprising, just like straight off the bat, like
three wins in a row.
Yeah, exactly. And then now in the 5th game, they're just like, all right, we're back to who we actually are. The wheels have come off. And I was a little surprised because Heung-min Son came back, and they also put in a few familiar faces, like a few old fan favorites, such as like Ndombele, and then Lo Celso is also back in. And then Christian Romero is the center back from Atalanta that was slotted right back in. They do have a bit of an injury crisis in the back, but I expected their new signings of like Emerson Royale and Romero to do a little better against Chelsea, but Chelsea just made them look like a mid-table team. Like it's a combination of, I guess, the new backline of Tottenham still trying to adjust, but also just the rotation of that Chelsea squad, where I feel like Tuchel, it's almost like Pep Guardiola, where you never know what that starting 11 is. Like Konate didn't start this game, and then you got Kai Havertz, Lukaku, and Mason Mount up top. You don't know whether it's gonna be like Werner. You don't know. Well, Pulisic is currently injured right now, but you don't know if it's gonna be like Hudson-Odoi up there too. It kind of changes here and there, and it all kind of still works. It's more like now the system can supply the most to bring out the players rather than like the players bring out more, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Whereas like if I were to make a comparison to like NFL, it'd be like the 49ers or like the Ravens. They are like very run heavy teams. They can just put anyone that plays running back into their system and it works. Mm-hmm. Whereas for Chelsea, it's kind of almost the same. But for Chelsea, they had the luxury of every single one of the running backs were like a top 5 player. Like Lukaku's one of the top strikers in the world. Kai Havertz, one of the top like cams, center attacking mids that's up and coming in the world. And Mason Mount making a name for himself too. So it's a little bit of all kind of combination of Tuchel. And Chelsea, although they're kind of showing so much dominance, the title race is still pretty neck and neck in terms of them, Liverpool, and Manchester United. So, and also Man City, of course. But right now, of those 3, we're going to talk about Man City a little later. But for Chelsea, this game, they made Tottenham really look like the team that's going to be struggling like Arsenal.
Yeah, I think Tottenham. I don't think anyone really thought Tottenham were going to be title challengers, and I think their start of the season caught everyone by surprise, especially beating Manchester City in the opening match of the Premier League or the opening weekend in the Premier League season. But they collapsed during Crystal Palace. They looked literally they did not look dangerous at all against Chelsea. So it kind of shows that with Nuno, we knew what we were going to get, a coach that wants to sit back and hit on the counterattack, not really play a ton of progressive type of play. and he's not really getting the best out of his players. And Harry Kane looked pretty lackluster, looked a little bit lost out there. Dele Alli, a player I want to bring up because I know we've mentioned him before. Now, obviously, past couple seasons, it's kind of shown that he's not really the player that we once thought he was going to be. But it is kind of sad because I remember when he first burst onto the scene for Tottenham, when he came, I believe, from where's the team that he came from?
MK Dons.
Yeah, MK Dons. When he came from them, I mean, he just basically lit up the Premier League. I mean, this like everyone was saying like this guy could be like the next. The way he played, it was almost he was a midfielder, but it was almost like he was a center forward at times. The amount of times he would just bomb forward, burst forward in the box. I mean, this guy was scoring Yaya Toure level amount of goals, where he was scoring close to 18, 15 goals a season. I think for like 3 seasons in a row, he was getting that close to that amount. And then the past couple seasons, he's just not been there, like anywhere near that player. But when I watch him now, it just doesn't look like he doesn't play like that player he once was. He doesn't really make those runs into the box. He doesn't really bomb forward as much. And when he's in the box, he doesn't look very clinical. He kind of looks a little bit lost out there. He doesn't know if he should play the pass or if he should shoot. He doesn't really have the confidence to take on volleys like he once did. So I know we've mentioned it before, but I think this season and this past season just shows that, I think Dele Alli may have been one of those players that peaked, like his peak just hit really early. And then just for some reason, he can never get back to that level. Or, maybe those first 3 years were just kind of an anomaly for him, because it's a little bit sad because at one point, Sir Alex Ferguson basically told Jose Mourinho to do all you can to sign Dele Alli to get him to Manchester United, because he even thought that he was going to be the next like greatest midfielder of this generation. But man, he has fallen so far off those heights, and it's a little sad because I was a fan of Dele Alli. I really liked the way he played, but man, it's a little sad. I know Tottenham fans are kind of mad with him, but yeah, it's crazy to think that where he once was to where he is now in a Tottenham shirt.
I feel like it's partially mental as well. Actually, mostly mental because when you played back in the days, it reminded me a lot of like that like bad mannerism that you see from like a Trey Young or like a not almost like Cantona's a little too far, but like someone who
Confidence.
you'd see the memes of him like flicking off other players,
Yeah.
like just bad mouthing other players that are on the opposition team, like just not very nice. It's basically, even though he had that little wave, like all those montages and gifs of him just waving to the camera, making him look nice. But I mean, that's the kind of player he was. He's just kind of mean, and that kind of played onto his character, where like he would just do whatever. He'd get the header, he'd get the goal, he'd do the crazy, skillful kind of show offy moves, like that spectacular goal that we can all kind of remember from Crystal Palace, where he flicked it from in front, like flicked it over him like a reverse rainbow, and then
Yeah.
volleyed it on the half volley to score. So you don't really picture that happening these days now. It's very much like he knows the basics. He knows he's like a above average player, but like that's about it. Like all that magic, all that swagger is just kind of gone.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's like the mental part where it's just like he doesn't think to do that anymore. It doesn't come naturally to him. He has the dreadlocks now, but it's just like, man, maybe he needs to go back to that the shaved the shaved head kind of Dele Alli, and maybe even a change of scenery might help because I feel like he's just been pretty stagnant the past several seasons. Granted, he got sent into purgatory by Jose Mourinho, and he got brought back to life by Nuno, but even then, right now, he's still trying to figure it out. It's just like he's kind of lost that magic. And he's still trying to find it, but I don't know if he can get it back at Tottenham. Do you feel like this is something you can eventually find back at Tottenham, or maybe a change of scenery might help, or it might be gone for good?
Yeah, I feel like a change of scenery would help him. I feel like he's sort of similar to Jesse Lingard, where those couple of seasons with Lingard when he came in, he was very spectacular. He was scoring a lot of great goals. He was performing, a lot of skill moves. He was getting past people. He's playing with a lot of confidence. And then, you know, when that terrible season with Manchester United happened, he kind of lost a lot of that confidence, and it took him so long to get it back. And eventually, when they loaned him out to West Ham, he kind of found that magic again and found that groove of his. And I feel like with Dele Alli, maybe that's the same thing that needs to happen. Actually, I think that will probably be the best thing for him to do is to go to a team and get loaned out to another Premier League side where he can kind of he can have that ability to show off, and that pressure is kind of off his shoulders a little bit because, you know, it's crazy to think at one point he was valued close to like 80 million. He was close to valued to like around 60 or 80 million. And now, I mean, you could probably march in and go to Daniel Levy's office and offer 20 mil and probably get him for even less than that, which is just crazy because at one point he was considered one of the highest, rated youth prospects in the world. And now he's just kind of an average midfielder at best. But yeah, I definitely think a change of scenery in terms of a loan spell will probably do him a lot of good and hopefully maybe get some of that magic back.
Mm-hmm. And that definitely take the pressure off of Heung-min Son and Harry Kane because, last season they went off together, that duo of Kane and Son, but this season the fusion's not really there. It's just
Yeah.
like they try to fuse and then it's just like, nope.
Yeah.
it's
It's
just
not happening.
it's not happening. There's no connection. And I feel like Dele Alli should be one of those people connecting the two, but it's just
Yeah,
not working out.
I also feel bad for, I know we mentioned the talk about Harry Kane, but it just seems like this season is going to be kind of a wash and lost season for Tottenham, with the likes of especially Harry Kane, who visibly and forcefully wanted himself out of the club. And now he's basically in this wasted year of his prime, just playing for a club that really isn't going to be fighting for the Premier League title, not really fighting for a ton of titles. So now it's just kind of, he's stuck in this weird zone of, next year we're guaranteed that he's probably going to move to another club. So Tottenham are just in a very, very, very weird place right now because they're not really going to be challenging for the title and they're not really in a relegation battle. They're just kind of stuck in meh territory right now. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I wanted to quickly mention Chelsea because their defense and just I was going to say the overall squad, but certain players like Antonio Rudiger has like totally transformed his Chelsea career, basically his entire career as a player. I look at players like Azpilicueta, Rudiger, Thiago Silva. We always knew was class, so that's not really that surprising. But players like Marcus Alonso as well. These players at one point under Lampard, I mean, we've mentioned this before, but under Lampard, they couldn't even get a game in, or they look completely lost out there. Now under Thomas Tuchel, they literally look close to world class players. Like Rudiger, I feel like has totally transformed himself into being a strong, top quality center back in terms of his leadership and also his ability as a defensive pairing with Thiago Silva. Aspilicueta has basically slotted in and been that leader in the back as well. Marcus Alonso has found his footing again as a left back. So, I have to give Tuchel credit. He's definitely come in and just reorganized the defense and basically turned a lot of players that could have been castaways into now leaders into the team, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm. It's very much the opposite of Dele Alli, where you
Yeah.
saw all the magic at the beginning of Dele Alli, and then you're just hoping that comes back. Whereas for Rudiger, I mean, you saw the potential, you saw the promise when he was at Roma, but then when you came to Chelsea, it was very much like he was never really first choice. It was very much like we'll rotate him in, we'll slot him in. Hopefully, he comes better. He has all the physical traits to be potentially world class or at least above average, but yeah, it never really came. But under Tuchel, we're seeing a lot of things about him that just you never even thought about. Like, for example, his speed. Like he
Yeah.
ran like 35 kilometers an hour, which in miles per hour, I don't know what that is, but I assume that's really fast. But it's just like you don't really think about something like that from like a Rudiger, where it's just like, oh, he's actually fast. Whereas like back in the days, when you think of him, it's just always like, oh, he's kind of clunky. He makes the occasional errors. He's like an all-right defender. He's just like a good placeholder in case one of the actual starters gets injured. Whereas now it's like, oh, he's actually pretty clinical on the ball. He's actually pretty like confident when you give him like a one-on-one opportunity.
hmm
So like that kind of confidence like really can change a player. You can
Yeah.
literally see the two like the juxtaposition between Dele Alli and then Rudiger now, where it's
Yeah.
just
Confidence. That's all you need as a
confidence is
player.
key.
If you get the confidence, like your entire career is going to change. But I mean, that's what we've been saying about Chelsea ever since Tuchel's come in. I will say that in the beginning of this season, I didn't think Chelsea were going to continue their winning ways under Tuchel. I thought they would struggle a little bit, but they've they've been impressing me because they basically have ran away with that. And they've been so consistent. They've been one of the most consistent teams in Europe as well, winning their Champions League matches as well. So they look like a very, very solid team. And this result, not really that surprising, considering the fact that they've been so good and so dominant to start off the season. But moving on to the West Ham versus Manchester United match, This game was crazy. Even though Manchester United won 2-1, this was a very, very crazy matchup. Literally all the drama happened at the end of the game, probably the last 5 minutes of the game. Jesse Lingard gets subbed on. He scores a banger into the top right corner, just finesses it in the top right corner in the 88th minute to basically get the winning goal for Manchester United. A couple minutes later, Ronaldo goes into the box, blatantly gets tackled by Kurt Zuma. It's clear foul, gets tackled by Kurt Zuma. United players are calling for a penalty. Martin Atkinson doesn't even look at VAR, doesn't even check VAR to even check for the penalty. He just gets on with it. And then, literally at the last kick of the game, or second to last kick of the game, a West Ham United player tried to cross in a ball into the box, and then it hit the arm of Luke Shaw, which I agree. I think it was a handball. VAR checks it, calls for the handball, and the David Moyes, as basically his super sub, goes full Garrett Southgate mode and essentially brings on Mark Noble, a cold Mark Noble. That what I was reading in the reports and also from the pundits out in Europe, they basically said that he was not even training at all. He was not warming up. He had no warm ups. He had no sense of like warming up his muscles. Just basically, David Moyes saw him on the bench, told him to get undressed and get onto the pitch to take the penalty, and probably takes a really mediocre penalty. David De Gea saves it. His first penalty save since 2016, which is crazy. Saves it, and then United end up winning the game. So that all happened in a span of probably 5 or 6 minutes to end the game, and it was a wild finish. But a lot of United fans and a lot of Premier League pundits were also calling on Martin Atkinson because they thought his refereeing was a little bit questionable in this game. And I believe the Premier League or the Referee Association or the FA released a statement this morning saying that they agreed that it wasn't the foul on Kurt Zuma on Ronaldo that should have been called a pen, but actually a foul on that Pablo Fornals did on Paul Pogba, I believe, in the first half. That should have been called for a penalty, but wasn't looked at in terms of VAR. So it was a very questionable game for Martin Atkinson. He missed a couple of calls, and it honestly almost ended up hurting Manchester United at the end if David De Gea doesn't save that penalty. But some questionable calls. But I would have pointed back to David Moyes bringing on Mark Noble. If you're the manager, would you bring on your penalty specialist at the end of the game for the final kick of the game, even if they are really experienced like Mark Noble with no warm up? Would you bring him on to score basically a pressure cook penalty to win or to tie the game at that moment, or do you just pick someone else that's on the field that's been playing?
That'd be some big mind games because, as David De Gea, you're looking at the 11 that are on the pitch, minus the keeper probably. Like Lucas Fabianski's not going to take it. But you look at the other players, it's like, all right, it's probably going to be like Ben Rama who might take it. It might be like Fornals that takes it. And then all of a sudden, Mark Noble, like the captain, the man who's been in the Premier League for years, it's like, all right, he might know something. It's kind of like when Chelsea tried to bring on like Caballero to be like the goalie for a shootout, or like City when they do it and bring Caballero. So it's a little tricky. I feel like the fact that Mark Noble was completely cold, like no warm up or anything, like that would probably backfire. And also, it's a lot more as if I were the manager, I would ask who has the most confidence. Because ironically, I feel like although technique is one thing, I feel like penalty confidence is an actual key thing. Like I know we just talked about confidence in like the previous, Tottenham versus Chelsea section, but
Mm-hmm.
like this is like a key thing that I really think of, and it's an actual mental thing because a penalty is like 12 yards. It looks really far away when you're the kicker, and it looks really close when you're the goalie. So it's just whoever has like the good mental mind game of just being able to like, all right, just fade everything out, just focus on the shot that you're taking, and then that's it. So it's a very long-winded way of me saying if Mark Noble felt confident that he could do it and not David Moyes saying he should just do it without like Mark's opinion or anything, then I would let Mark take it. But if it was David Moyes saying Marco take it and then Mark was like, I don't know, boss, I don't know about it, then I would say no. Like I would say you give it to whoever is confident who wants to take it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a little bit questionable on him. Well, I think it goes both ways. I think if he goes and scores it and, they equalize, David Moyes looks like a genius. If he doesn't bring him on, he lets one of the other players take it, then people are going to say, oh, you had Mark Noble on the bench, your penalty kick specialist. Why didn't you bring him on? So I feel like it's a two-way street that you can't win. It's like if you succeed, you look like a genius. If you don't, you look like a failure. So it's one of those things that people take from both ways. But I do agree with you. I think I would have personally preferred if I was the manager, I would have just let someone else on the pitch take it because they've already been playing. They have the adrenaline in them. They know what's the situation. If you bring someone on the bench, you never know if they could have been dozing off. They're just been kind of, in their own world out there. And the fact that you have to bring him on, he has no warm up. His muscles are cold. He may have a tight hamstring. You're just telling him to basically go kick the winner right here, go kick the equalizer. In that pressure cook situation, I don't agree with it. A little bit of bad management on David Moyes, but in terms of Manchester United, I wanted to point out David De Gea because I think I mentioned him a couple episodes ago. But as I mentioned today, this was his first penalty save since 2016 for him, which is a very long time for a goalkeeper. Essentially, the stat was he has gone 40 consecutive penalty kicks before that without saving a single one, including penalty shootouts, which is just wild. And the fact that he saved it, it's kind of a lot of the vibe I was getting, as a Manchester United fan and also other United fans, is that he's kind of back in terms of essentially reclaiming his space as the number one solidified number one keeper at Manchester United, throwing away Dean Henderson, the competition from him, and almost essentially getting back to that form that he once had a couple seasons ago, where he was close to being, or arguably you could make the case that he was the number one keeper in Europe, but getting close to that, getting back to that top level of goalkeeping. It just seems like he has his confidence back. And I don't know, it just seems like the David De Gea, prime De Gea is back. And it's crazy because he's only 29, I believe. And we're already talking about prime De Gea coming back. But it's been a tricky couple seasons for him. But I'm glad that he's finally showcasing some of his quality that we always knew he had. Just for some reason, the confidence wasn't there for the longest time.
I was thinking that same thing. Whereas last season, you'd be thinking, "Oh, Dean Henderson, he's gonna take over the
Yeah,
spot." De Gea's kind of lost it. He's he's
exactly.
he's binned it, but he really is coming back, especially this season, where he's starting to make those saves. I think we even mentioned in the previous episodes this same season where he's starting to make those saves with his legs that a traditional keeper wouldn't make, like those quick reflexes that are kind of like his spider monkey esque kind of De
Hmm.
Gea kind of, I guess,
Moments.
moments. Yeah, like the thing you just write his name on is like, oh yeah, that's a signature De Gea thing to do.
Yeah.
And like I saw that penalty kick, and I was like, all right, it's definitely there's like a 90% chance of going in based on the fact that I know De Gea hasn't saved anything for like years. But for him to save that too, I feel like that was like a turning point where it's like, all right, he's back.
Yeah, and it
And
was yeah, I was gonna mention this real quick. After he saved it, when the full time whistle hit, all the United players from the
yeah,
bench, the staff, like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was running towards him. Ronaldo came and cheered for him. They were all, basically jumping on him and just celebrating him. It was awesome to see because, we had players saying like numero uno, which basically means like his number, but also the number one keeper. So it seems like the players, they've always loved David De Gea, but it was just great seeing that kind of that camaraderie where after the full time whistle hit, everyone came on to cheer him on because, it was just a great moment to see.
this is literally the like biggest crucial moment of the game too, where it's literally almost the last kick of the game.
Yeah.
He does it, he saves it, then the team gets 3 points. And I don't know, maybe it was David Moyes throwing him a bone. He's like, I know you've been having some rough times. Let me just throw Mark Noble out there. He's a little cold. He always goes right. Something like that. Then De Gea knows. But I'm surprised that you also mentioned he's 29. I thought he was
Yeah.
older.
No,
Dang.
he's pretty young. That's the crazy thing. He's only about 28 or 29, I believe. He hasn't hit 30, which is just crazy.
Oh my
But I
gosh.
remember he was signed for United. I think he signed as a 20 or 21-year-old, so
Hmm.
or
Yeah, he was
19.
really
So
young.
yeah, so he was really young, but he's been playing as a starter for United for a very long time. So it seems like he should be older, but he's just been the number one for such a long time. And it's funny, I think a lot of people mention that his downfall basically started during the 2018 World Cup against it was a Spain Portugal game where Ronaldo scored that hat trick where he let in a couple P rollers.
Yeah, the P roll.
And that essentially created his downfall in terms of his confidence. And now that they signed Ronaldo back, it seems like he got his mojo and his groove back as a goalkeeper. So I don't know. Maybe there's something in that, but it the vibe I got is definitely that it's fun to see David De Gea back because I've missed him being. I want to see David De Gea making those crazy saves. Like this was the keeper that literally stopped saved Manchester United from being Arsenal a couple seasons back.
Mhm.
Essentially, that he saved them so many points back in the day. So it's great to see that now he's able to kind of be in a team and be thriving in a team that's actually really good. So once again, I'm stoked that David De Gea is coming back to his full power, essentially, hopefully. But moving on to Liverpool versus Crystal Palace. Liverpool dominated Palace 3-0. It was pretty easy win. Mane scoring, Salah scoring, and then Keita actually getting on the score sheet. I feel like that's kind of a I don't when you mention Liverpool scores, you don't really think of Naby Keita too often, but he scored a banger in this one. But yeah, Liverpool are continuing to roll in the Premier League. They're picking up the wins, and they're rebounding from last season, so it's a big thing for them. But yeah, Liverpool cruise for this one, beating Crystal Palace 3-0.
I feel like the scoreline though doesn't really say the whole story because it looks like Liverpool went off, like 3-0. It's like, oh yeah, piece of cake. But in the beginning, within like the first 2 minutes, like Zaha could have almost scored by accident. But gotta give some credit to Ali's son because as a Liverpool fan, when you've watched the end of Pepe Reina to Mignolet, the whole era of Mignolet there, and then Karius, and then getting Ali's son, the jump from getting Karius and then from starting Karius and then to starting Ali's son, that jump was insane because you have finally a reliable keeper that can do world class things like save your team, kind of like De Gea did for Manchester United. But it just comes like week in and week out. And now we kind of take it for granted because Ali's son, he literally saved a 1-0 within the first 2 minutes by diving into his goal backwards and then slapping the ball out into the post and then out for a corner. So it's like little things like that where it's like, dang, we kind of take that for granted. And there's even at times when like a crazy shot would be like one touch through the box and during a corner kick and he just catch it. Like it wouldn't like parry it into danger or parry it in his own goal and no P rollers. Like he just catches everything. And that is something, we just kind of put out there where it's like he kind of saved the team at some points because this Liverpool backline, they basically rotated out the starting four, except for Van Dijk. They brought in Samikas to play left back, James Milner, the Swiss Army knife, at right back, and then Konate. He got Ibrahima Konate got his start in the Premier League playing at the right center back position with Virgil van Dijk as his buddy at left. But it was a little shaky, I'm not gonna lie. Having James Milner shut down Zaha, I knew it was gonna be a little what's the word? Just
Troubling.
yeah, trepidatious. I guess that's the word. But I was like, oh my gosh, like I knew at some point he's gonna go through. But luckily, if Konate up there as his backup, like as in if the first layer of defense goes down on the right back, then Konate would be there. He did a pretty solid job. He basically was able to shield and he didn't make any rash tackles. He was just very, he's just very good at just being very conservative as a center back. He had all the physical traits to, keep up with a Zaha or an Ayew. Whereas I would say on the passing side, his technical skills, it was a little questionable at times, which is what I was kind of anticipating, but it was good to see him finally get a start. And it was kind of surprising also where like we're not going to mention too much about the Champions League yet, but like in the Champions League match against Milan, Jurgen Klopp started Matip and Joe Gomez as the partnership. So I was like, I wonder what the thinking is. If he's going to keep like these kind of pairs together, with Matip and Van Dijk, and then Matip and Gomez, and then Konate and Van Dijk, kind of things like that. So, or if he's just going to do like a musical chairs kind of situation. So that's something to kind of keep in mind for the future. But there's a lot of close calls that were just kind of covered up from just good individual play from Ali's son, and also just some individual plays just from the players themselves, like Shamika's the man who never sleeps. The man who looks like he hasn't slept for like a week. He's kind of turning up this game too. And I mean, you got to give credit to kind of stopping all these last minute kind of shots from Crystal Palace. I was kind of surprised that Patrick Vieira's side is doing this well. I guess I had the bar so low after seeing De Boer kind of screw up Crystal Palace. I thought Vieira would be like a second
Yeah.
coming, but it was a decent showing despite the scoreline. But
Mm-hmm.
I will say it was kind of relieving to see Mane score. Like that
His
was something we kind of
hundredth
mentioned.
Premier League goal.
Yeah, his 100th Premier League goal. It was good positioning, I would say. Like that's honestly what he should be transitioning to, if not already has. Like that mindset to always be in the right spot in the right time to score. And then the final goal, Keita. Naby Keita came on for an injured Thiago, and hopefully that's more to come because he scored a volley on his weak foot from outside the box in the like second to last minute of the game. And he tried to pull one of those mean mugs that Eric Cantona used to do, and
Yeah, the
he
Eric
didn't really pull it
Cantona,
off for too long.
the famous Cantona, just
Yeah, just
this
like
is
look
me.
into the
Yeah.
he's like, "Yeah, of course." He's like, "This is what I do." I'm like, "No, you don't usually do this, but hopefully it becomes regular." So, like, that was something that it was very hopeful to see as a Liverpool fan because after seeing, like, Harvey Elliott go down and after also hearing that he may possibly come back at the end of the season,
It's
which is
crazy.
insane to hear. I'm not gonna rush that. I still think he should take as much time as he needs. And also seeing Thiago go down, I was like, "Oh, man. Not like this, not again."
Yeah.
Seeing Keita come in, it's like, all right, there's a little bit of hope. We got some depth there.
Mhm.
And I was surprised to see like Minamino to even get any subs. I was like, what's going on? My
Yeah.
man is just warming the bench.
Yeah.
So
His new role is just bench warmer at this point.
just LB left bench.
Left
But
bench, but
I
um
do want to mention as well. I had like this little note that Chelsea and Liverpool, they're both basically the two dominant teams going into this title race with Man U just right behind, not too far. But it was surprising to see they have the same record, but also the same score in the first 5 matches of of this Premier League season. Like, if you look at
yeah,
their first
same
5
match
matches,
results.
it's the same match results, just straight down the line.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever seen that before.
Yeah, it's a little bit odd. It definitely shows that you know, anything from that, it definitely shows that these two are definitely the I would say Manchester United, Man City are contenders as well. I feel like it's going to be a four-team title race, but from the early showing, it definitely shows that Chelsea and Liverpool have kind of come in and really concentrated and like know what they are about because the fact that they've both conceded only one goal, which was against each other when they played, is pretty phenomenal. Like through 5 games, to only concede like one goal. That's really, really good. And one other thing is, I feel like Chelsea and Liverpool, when you go in each week, you kind of know in a sense. I know we mentioned Tuchel likes to rotate, Klopp is rotating a little bit, but you kind of know who their star players are, who's going to create the chances, but you also know what you're going to get in terms of play style. You know how they're going to come in. Liverpool going to do the Gangen press, going to dominate, going to try to press. They're going to be very strong in the back. Chelsea going to be very, very strong and solidified in the back. Not going to give up a lot of chances, but also going to be very deadly on the counter attack with Lukaku and company. So the fact that they both come in with very different play styles, but the fact that you can know what you're going to expect from each of these teams each week, and the fact they can perform it each week at a very consistent rate, it's pretty admirable because it's hard to do that. And I feel like Chelsea's almost taking Manchester City's spot as like the top rival of Liverpool this season because even though City are going to be very dangerous, they don't have that number 9 striker, that really reliable number 9 that could score a ton of goals for them. So they're in a sense just rotating a bunch of wingers to play as the number 9, and it's kind of costing them a couple points as we saw we're about to with their Southampton game. And then Manchester United, they are a very solid team, but I think you know yes, they added the likes of Rafael Varane, and Cristiano Ronaldo, winners that know how to win, that can win everything. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is still a young coach, and they still have a decent young squad that needs to kind of learn and develop and how to become winners. So I feel like they can be title winners, but they might be just a little bit more inconsistent than Liverpool and Chelsea have just from the start of the season. They've shown a little bit of inconsistency, which I think might cost them going into the latter half of the season, but we'll see. But I think it's very interesting that Chelsea and Liverpool have kind of matched each other in that sense.
And also just to say Chelsea have just gelled so quickly in terms of chemistry because Tuchel, I still he hasn't even been here for 2 full years yet because he came in like halfway
He hasn't even
last
been here
season.
for a whole year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's true
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, I think he came in. I think Lampard got sacked in January or February, something around there.
I believe
Um,
so.
yeah, because I believe he came in maybe before the round of 16 match because I feel like Lampard got him into the round of 16,
Oh,
and
yeah,
then
that's right. That's right.
Tuchel took over from there. So yeah, it hasn't even been a whole year for Tuchel.
And then it looks like this has been his team for years
Yeah,
now.
it's
So
crazy.
something's going off because like you see that PSG team that he managed right before. It's like it always felt like there's something missing. It was like maybe it was Tuchel, and then now you see under Pochettino, Messi can't score, and it's just like maybe it wasn't Tuchel. Maybe it was. Maybe he's actually better
Yeah.
than we all think.
Yeah,
And
2 German coaches top of the Premier League,
there we go.
Tuchel
And
and
then we
Klopp.
got Pep Guardiola.
Yeah, Pep Guardiola.
Man,
But that
you're gonna go straight
yeah,
into that.
yeah, good transition there with the Man City Southampton game. I know we mentioned before, but this game ended in a 0-0 draw. But what's interesting was before in their midweek Champions League fixture against RB Leipzig, which ended in, I believe, a 6-3 or 5-3
Mhm.
win for Manchester City. Very, very exciting game filled with a lot of attacking promise. After the game, Pep Guardiola asked, begging essentially City supporters to come join them and watch the game in the Etihad, the Southampton game, saying it's a really important game. Basically, after I think a couple days after that, City supporters caught wind of that statement and were essentially kind of annoyed by it. They didn't really appreciate the words Pep Guardiola said after his post-game match in the Champions League. And then in his pre-match press conference before the Southampton game, a reporter basically asked Guardiola his comments of whether he will apologize based on what the response from the City supporters. And he essentially said, "I'm not going to apologize for what I said." So there's been a little bit of weird beef going on between City fans and Pep Guardiola. And I feel like in general, this season, Pep Guardiola has been complaining a little bit too frequently and been saying a little bit of things like that just kind of, I don't know. They're a little bit weird when you think about them because of, the kind of the relationship him and the City fans have built over the past couple seasons or the past 5 years now. Um, it's kind of been a little rocky at times this season just because they don't have an actual number nine. Him calling out the fans to basically come to the Etihad, so it's a little bit weird, and it didn't help that they ended up drawing this game. And Raheem Sterling not really taking his Euro 2020 form and bringing it into the Premier League has kind of struggled this season, at least to start off the season.
I mean, I'm not really too surprised in terms of just the striker at like City basically kind of struggling because I mean, although we kind of always seen the City side being a team that likes to win games 5-0, 6-1, like win
Hmm.
big at times, they usually did have Aguero. They usually did
Yeah.
have someone who was a reliable striker, not always playing like a Ferran Torres at striker or a Sterling at striker, something like that. It was more like a luxury that they did just to kind of almost show off. Whereas, like maybe Pep Guardiola was trying to kind of relate to that Spain 2016 or 2014 squad where they played Cesc Fabregas at striker just because they didn't have any other player that was a striker at the time that they felt they could rely on because that was at the time when David Villa was still a little bit on the decline after his injury, his big injury to him breaking his leg, and also
Hmm.
Torres was still like Chelsea Torres. So they trusted a midfielder to play striker and they did like a 4-3-3 false nine. Whereas for Man City, I feel like they're trying to do the same thing, except instead of having a Fabregas up top, they have a winger. And this is
Yeah.
not like FIFA. You can't just have someone fast up top and then it would just be
They're gonna
someone who's
score goals.
finishing. Yeah, they're just gonna score goals. And it's kind of showing. And it's kind of weird to doubt Pep Guardiola's tactics, but I feel like he kind of had a blessing that he didn't realize he had in Sergio Aguero. Where it's
Yeah.
just like, oh, it kind of came naturally. It's like, yeah, of course he's going to score goals. And it's like maybe Gabriel Jesus will also score, but Gabriel Jesus has also been on the decline too. I feel like he hasn't really
Yeah, he's
lived up
he's like
to.
he's been following the Anthony Martial decline.
Yeah, I feel like those two are basically on the same track. Also, Dele Alli. It's just like
Yeah.
they're all just on that same train going
Just
down,
riding the bench,
riding the
riding
bench.
riding the pine. But
So
I think it's interesting because I remember when Pep Guardiola first came in, he actually wanted to try to ship Sergio Aguero out of the club. He didn't really play that often. He didn't start because I believe his comments were that Aguero needed to adapt to my system, in terms of being an all-around team player, not just being a poacher that just scores goals. But it's funny now they really need that poacher that will just score goals because if you look at all the top clubs, Manchester United have Cristiano Ronaldo, Chelsea have Romelu Lukaku, Liverpool, I believe I guess Liverpool are in that kind of that same boat where they don't have that number nine, that out and out true number nine, but they do have the likes of Salah that seems to score 20 plus goals a season. consistently. Um, you look across Europe, some of the biggest and best teams: Real Madrid, Benzema; Bayern Munich, Robert Lewandowski; Dortmund, Erling Haaland. They all have that true number 9 that will just score goals for fun. They're just will score goals no matter what. You give them a little bit of space and they can somehow whip in and then score a goal. So I think City are really going to miss that, because that's a huge thing to like not have on your squad, to not have that goal scorer. It will definitely cost them a couple points, and like we saw against Southampton, when you don't have that number 9, it hurts a lot.
Mm-hmm. Even off the bench too. It's
Yeah,
just
a super
something
sub.
to just change the team. And that's why I'm still a little confused about that Jack Grealish purchase over the summer,
Yeah,
where
it,
it's
it
like
seems like they just like they flex their money for no reason.
this is more of a luxury buy than like
Kai
Kai
Havertz.
Havertz to Chelsea after they bought Hakim Ziyech. It's just like, why? I mean, now it kind of makes sense, but that's unfortunately just due to like the injuries that are at Chelsea right now. But for City, they literally have so many wingers and players that kind of are like Jack Grealish that it's like they don't have the finishing last piece to,
Yeah,
connect it all. Where it's
they
just like they
wanted
have all
Harry
these
Kane.
people,
It's the funniest thing is they wanted Harry Kane, but just Tottenham would not budge and sell him. So
and then
the
it's like,
Harry
you know
Kane,
what?
they looked at him as like that's our missing piece, and they just didn't get him.
And then you got Jack Grealish instead.
Yeah,
It's like,
which
what?
yeah. It's
I
unfortunate, but I feel like it's just been part of the overall vibe at City that we knew coming in. It's just that they didn't have that striker, and they were just going to live with the fact that they didn't have a true number 9. So I guess that they kind of get what they get at times. They're going to look really exciting. They might win games 6-3 like they did in the Champions League, but then they might also draw a lot of questionable games due to the lack of clinical finishers at the club. But um, I guess speaking, I know we mentioned the top 4 teams here, all of them in terms of their past results in the weekend, but that kind of brings up another point that we had mentioned last week. That's probably going to be a point coming up this entire season, is that this title race in general is going to be a really good one, because I believe this is probably the first time since I've started watching the Premier League that I can legitimately say that I feel like there's more than 2 teams in the title race. I feel like Manchester United, Manchester City, you can comfortably kind of put them into the title race contenders as well, just due to the talent, players they have. Chelsea have the players, Liverpool have the players, Liverpool have the coach, Chelsea have the coach, City have the coach. All these factors in, I'm really excited for this, the rest of this Premier League season, because the top 4 just look like absolute, legitimately 100%. They look like contenders, and that's the first time I've seen 4 teams look like contenders in a long time. Like the last time I saw this was probably in highlights from old throwback Premier League seasons back in the day.
Yeah, even when I'm trying to think about it too, is like the most I can probably remember is like 3. But I
Mm-hmm.
can't even remember the year. It's always usually, back in the days, it was very early on, it was like Chelsea, Man U, or it'd be Man City versus Liverpool. And then more recently it'd be like Man City most of the time.
Yeah.
And then just one other team that just so happens to go off that same season. But this season, it really is just flipping around. Like we just mentioned Man City, they might struggle throughout most of the season here and there, dropping a point or two because of the lack of a poacher, the lack of a finisher. But they're still going to be really close behind Liverpool, Man U, and Chelsea. And I still think I picked them to win the whole thing still, just because in terms of just depth, I still feel like the Man City team has the most depth.
Mm-hmm.
So if injuries were to come through and ravage, then I feel like City are the most prepared and they have the most flexibility to change on the fly. So
Mm-hmm.
even though they don't play with a striker, maybe Pep Guardiola will find a new system that we're not even thinking of now. It's like, you know what? We're gonna play these 2 wingers, just 2 up top, and they're both wingers, and it somehow works. So it's just something just kind of wonky. I actually have a book that I actually bought that I still need to read about the origins of the tiki taka. That I'll give a book review later, but
Oh,
that's
nice.
something I actually want to kind of find some interest in, because this kind of style from Pep is so distinct and it's been working for so long, but just occasionally you just see it just downfalls in like a knockout game or in like a game like this against Southampton if the
Mm-hmm.
puzzles don't work together. And it it goes down from a tactics to also probably like a culture, because I heard from a quote from Aguero where it's like when he went to Barcelona's training
Yeah.
like day one, It was like, yeah, I showed up like an hour early. No one was there. And I was like, can I work out? And they're like, no one's at the gym. You can't even go in. It's locked. So you just wait. Whereas for City, he's like, I always showed up an hour early, kind of did your rounds, go practice an extra hour, things like that. And I feel like that kind of culture, I can see that at City is very hardcore, work hard, play hard.
Mhm.
So, maybe this is slight burnout
Standards
at times, but
standards have been set,
yeah.
and
So, oh, it's a little tricky to figure out because like each team has such different cultures as well and such different
yeah.
tactics. It's
It's
really
gonna be very. I'm looking forward to. I know we already got Chelsea, Liverpool, City, and Chelsea is actually coming up this weekend. But I'm really looking forward to how when all four of these top four teams face each other, whether it's United Liverpool, United City, United Chelsea, or vice versa. I'm excited to see how that goes down because you know this is essentially the points. If you win these games, you're putting yourself ahead, and you never know with the way this season is going, it could be a matter of 3 or 2 points that basically decides who finishes where in this league.
mhm. And that's usually what we've seen in the previous games or previous seasons
Hmm.
where Liverpool literally lost the title by
Yeah.
1 point. I was like, "Ugh." But this season is gonna be pretty close. Like we're saying City right now, it seems like apparently the weakest. This is kind of weird to say, but you can go maybe 2 months from now and then be like, all right, looks like United's the weakest now or something. Or it's like, oh, Liverpool's slipping. It's like you never know. And this season, as we kind of anticipated at the very beginning, whereas in our previews, it's gonna be one of the most unpredictable kind of seasons. And we're already kind of seeing that. So
Yeah.
whew,
Yeah. So it's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to it. Tyler's looking forward to it. The whole world is essentially looking forward to it because it's really, really exciting in terms of the top four talent. But moving into our last section, the preview section, as we mentioned before, we have some really, really good games this weekend. Really like top quality games. But to start it off, we have Southampton versus Wolves. Interesting one here. I believe it's what 16th versus 15th on the Premier League table. The position.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah. So
15th versus 16th,
yeah,
another
15.
relegation battle.
It'll be interesting. I feel like the Wolves, the way they've been playing, they haven't been rewarded in terms of the way they've been playing, the way they like to play is through now under Bruno Lage. They like to play with very attacking, pressing, bomb forward, go forward type of style, compared to what they were under Nuno Espirito Santo. Southampton, you know how they are with Rafael and Hudo. They will perform against the big teams, but then they will completely not show up against the smaller teams or teams that they should be competing with. So I think because of that, I actually think Wolves will probably go into the St. Mary's and pick up I would say 1-0 win.
Ooh. So how you kind of describe Southampton is kind of how I kind of think about them too, where they play to the level of their opposition.
Yeah, it brings Rafa
So
and Hudo to tears. He
yeah,
worked so hard going into the week for that one team that he literally goes into tears after beating them or drawing against them.
and then just goes downhill from there. But it's really kind of showing in terms of the record too. They're 0-4-1. So they have 4 draws and 1 loss and no wins. And so it really goes to show it's like, yeah, they're just playing to the opposition, just getting the draw and just going home. But Wolves in the meanwhile, it's kind of like the same as what we see in the previous few games this season where they're getting a lot of chances. They're getting a lot of opportunities. They're just getting really unlucky. Like, especially like last weekend
Poor
against
finishing.
Brentford. It'd be poor finishing or it'd just be literally unlucky opportunities where at one point Adama Traore smacked a ball into one of the Brentford defenders and then it hit off the post or hit off the crossbar and out. I was like, geez, they literally can't catch a break. And they brought in Hwang Yi-chan. He played the whole second half of last game, but he still couldn't get on the score sheet for that last game, unfortunately. And they had Raul Jimenez as well. So, they have all their pieces in. They have all the right pieces in. It's just that last thing. They didn't have the shooting boots on, as
Yeah.
so they say. And I feel like this is their big opportunity to finally get those shooting boots in. And I felt like that was the last game against Brentford was another chance too, but maybe against the Southampton side, it might be a little easier. So I'm gonna go 1-1. And it'll be a
Ooh.
start of Wolves finally getting some goals. But I think Southampton are too good at just playing to the opposition.
Yeah, yeah. Southampton, man, the way they prepare, they'll bring the Raffhouse and Hudo to tears. It's crazy.
Mhm.
I
And
think he
plus, yeah.
like random side note, I think I'm thinking like he's the only manager I know that can survive getting thrashed like 2 years in a row, like thrashed 9-0 and still have his job. That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. He must like be
It
blackmailing the Southampton board.
it's because, like, he has that kinda, like, mini Klopp press too at Southampton, like,
Yeah.
the great value version is, like, what we
Yeah.
like to call it. And then Wolves, it's kind of like a almost like a counterattack almost at times. So it's
Mhm.
gonna be interesting to see how these 2 tactics kinda clash as well, where it's like I feel like both teams aren't really set up to flourish against the other, if that makes
Mhm.
sense, in terms of
Yeah.
for themselves. So it's gonna be
Yeah.
kinda sloppy.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting one, and then moving on to the next game, we have the North London Derby, which on most weeks would probably be the biggest game of the weekend. But the way these two teams have been basically going at this Premier League season, it's a very underwhelming, probably one of the more underwhelming derbies, North London derbies from probably this past couple of years, because the way they started the season are polar opposites. Tottenham started off with 3 wins in a row. Arsenal started off with 3 defeats in a row. Arsenal now have 2 wins in a row. Tottenham now have 2 defeats in a row. So they're basically meeting at polar opposite times of their seasons, even though it's so early on. And in terms of the star quality power, Arsenal look like they're kind of finding a little bit of form. Tomiyasu has kind of come in and been a revelation at right back. Martin Odegaard has looked very solid, scored a wonderful free kick in his last game for Arsenal. The youngsters are doing well. Thomas Partey came back into the lineup, was playing. Um, so Arsenal are kind of finding their footing, and now it seems like Tottenham are on the free fall, where you have out of form Dele Alli, Harry Kane, you know, kind of just going through the motions at times. Heung-min Son slowly coming back. So this will be a very interesting one. I think the crowd will be up for it, obviously, because these two fan bases hate each other. But what I've also been saying, I think Arteta needs these points to kind of save his season. So I actually think this will underwhelming will probably end up being a. You know what? I'm going to go exciting. I'm going to go 2-2 draw for both. I think it's going to end up in a 2-2 draw for the North London Derby.
Oh, he took my score line, man.
I was about to go
But
1-1, but I was like, I think it'll be 2-2.
I'll change mine up. I'll say mine after this kinda quick thing, but for these 2 teams, it's kind of ironic that it's kind of an underwhelming North London derby because now since both teams are kind of on the decline, there's a little bit of hope where it's like if either one gets the result, it could maybe rejuvenate and jumpstart them getting them some momentum because Arsenal, they beat 2 teams that are fighting relegation. So it's like we don't really know for sure if, they're on the rise again. Whereas for Tottenham, they lost to a really good Chelsea side in the game before that. They didn't have Heung-min Son. So this is a true test for Tottenham to see if they can really at least look like they have a fighting chance for European competition, at least challenging for it. So for this, I don't want to say it's like an unstoppable force meets an impenetrable object or something like that, or an immovable object. I really don't think it's like that. It's more like it's like a balloon hits another balloon. It's not really two heavyweights going against each other. It's just very much like just two opposition that are kind of like at the same level at the same time. It's just like, one can really boost from the other. And at first I was actually thinking a 0-0. It might actually be like that, but usually a game like this, a derby, it's so fired up. It's like usually you do see goals, but you know what? I'll go with it. I'll go for 0-0.
Wow. Okay. 0-0. Interesting. I got
Mhm.
you. All right. No. I think it'll be an exciting derby. I think it'll be 2-2, but Tyler's going for both defenses to shut the other opponent's offense down. So no, it is. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I'll definitely say this North London derby will definitely be an interesting one in terms of the mood and the vibe going into it for both clubs. But moving on to the biggest game of the weekend, we have Chelsea versus Manchester City. Chelsea, the top of the table, Chelsea playing against Manchester City, who dropped points against Southampton. This one will be a very, very exciting and interesting matchup. Chelsea playing at the Bridge, Tuchel versus Pep Guardiola. Oh man, this is going to be a very, very good game. But I think the fact that both of these teams are good and they know how to, they're both coached by really, really good coaches. I actually think that they will kind of cancel each other out. So I think we'll get a 1-1 draw. I just think that I can't see giving either side an edge in this one. It's just kind of a tough, really good, like just two good teams meeting up with each other, and it's hard to find who has the edge on this one.
Man, once again, I was gonna say 1-1, but I'll actually go with that prediction scoreline just because I feel like for Man City, like Pep Guardiola, although he's been, the trusted manager for a long time, and he recently signed, or not even recently, but last season he signed an extension. It's not like he's going anywhere, but also at the same time, the expectations for him are pretty high. It's like you can't be dropping points 2 games in a row, even if one is Chelsea. So I think he has at least the minimum get the draw, and I feel like given the fact that they're facing an actual insane defense in Chelsea, where Tuchel rarely lets in a goal from his opponent, and then City, meanwhile, are kind of it's like Tyler Lockett in fantasy. It's like either they get 6 goals or they get 0. I feel like this game they're gonna finally get a little bit of balance, get like 1 goal, maybe from a penalty, maybe from a set piece, but it's gonna be a pretty close game. It's gonna be pretty squeaky, like the Liverpool versus Chelsea game from earlier in the season. So I'm gonna go with a 1-1. But yeah, there's no way Pep Guardiola is gonna be able to drop more points consistently
Yeah.
because
Yeah, you feel
man,
like if they
gonna get
if they
spanked.
lose this game, you almost feel like not the title is out of reach, but that's a lot of points to make up. I think that they would be at that point 5 points behind Chelsea because they're already 2 behind currently from Chelsea and Liverpool. So
Oh,
losing
they're
this game would
three,
be yeah,
three
3
behind now.
already. Yeah, so
Mhm.
it'll be a huge loss for them to be that many points behind the top of the table. So I think they need to stay in that race and stay in that pack. So I think it'll be a 1-1 draw, and Tyler's also calling a draw as well. It'll be a good game to watch. But yeah, that kind of wraps up episode 125 for us. As we always say, you can follow us on our social media pages at the Premier Pod on Instagram and Twitter. Send us any questions you like. We are happy to answer them and also use them as talking points for the next couple pods. You can also watch the video version of this podcast at the Premier Pod on YouTube. Subscribe to us on there if you want to catch the video version. And also, if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, you can leave us a rating and review. That helps us out and gets us basically on the top charts and gets us noticed out to other people. But if you don't want to do that and you just want to listen, that's totally fine. And if you want to share this podcast with someone that is also interested in soccer or the Premier League, we definitely appreciate that. And we love the support any way we can get it. So, as we always say, thank you guys so much for listening in on season 4, episode 125 with us. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys. Peace.
Peace.